Welcome to this episode of the Anthony Wherley's podcast. Basketball season is long, and towards the end it gets busy, and you're tired and you're worn out. And I haven't had a chance to do one of these. I don't even remember what the last icing on the cake was. The last one I did. So I've been wanting to get one, and now basketball is over. So having this on a Saturday afternoon. A number of years ago, I was on my way to watch Jared Entwistle play basketball in Galesburg at Carl Sandburg. And on my way home, I got to thinking about all the stories that I would have of being a coach. And I put that on Facebook, and someone's like, "You should write a book." And I jokingly said, "Yeah, but I coached in too small of places. Everybody knew who I was talking about." But when I decided to start this podcast, I thought, I can tell coaching stories, or I can have friends that coach on here and have them tell stories that maybe have an impact on somebody else, or they were involved in it. Maybe they played on the team of the story you're talking about, and it would mean something to them to hear those stories. My best friend in the world is a coach. He's an administrator now. He's been a teacher. I would say our lives parallel each other in kind of a crazy way, that if you would have told teenage us that we would be basically the same person for the same types of people across the distance of where we used to live, it'd be kind of neat. I'm sure we would think, well, that's kind of weird. But I'm sitting here today with my best friend, Jerry Butcher. He is the high school principal at Bushnell. Currently, he's been, like I said, a teacher, a coach. And a few years ago, while he was helping as a football coach, he told me this story. I don't remember why he was going through Mason City at the time, but he stopped. Right now we're sitting in my office at home right next to the kitchen, where he told me this I don't know, amazing story of an experience he had while coaching football. I'm not going to try to get into that. I'm going to let him tell me. But it's good to have you with me today. We've wanted to do this for a while. Fill in, I mean, the people that you know that you worked with at Carthage and the Illini West, they know they know the success. Talk about your coaching career before you get into the story. What have you been able to accomplish? You've accomplished a lot, but how about playoffs, state championships, whatever?
So I started coaching in Carthage in 1996. It was a year after they won their first state championship. They were already considered a playoff powerhouse because they'd gone to the playoffs every year and had gotten second in 84 and 88, and had a couple of good runs in the early 90s, and they had just fell short. Finally, in 95, they won the whole thing and considered one of the best Class A football teams of all time. So I came in the year after that, and to say we weren't very good that year, for other people would hear what I have to say, and because we were 8-3 and we lost in the second round of the playoffs, and it was disappointing. And the next year we were 6-4, and at the time, that 8-3 team that I was helping coach on, it was like the best team I'd ever been around. You know? Yeah,
because the funny thing about that is if you don't know us, we didn't come from winning,
right?
and we're not. That's not a shot at our home, but we didn't. When we were around a person that we both are thinking of that was hyper competitive, we weren't used to that. Like, we weren't around people who were hyper competitive. And as you say that about, like, when you first got there, I remember you saying that, like, when you got there, people in the community would take a high school kid out to eat. They'd pay for their lunch. Like, it was like when you were winning, it doesn't mean they didn't care about you if you were 8-3 and didn't make the state championship. But when you were kind of, as a high school kid, this is a big deal.
Yeah, it was kind of like in Hoosiers when they're given the free haircut.
Right.
It was like that. And you wonder what it would be like to be around that. And growing up, I think you were a freshman maybe, and I was in 8th grade when the VIT's football team made the playoffs, and they were just like, gods to us, and they had a good team top to bottom.
and Lee Hall came to the school. Like
Yeah,
Lee Hall, Channel
yeah.
25 I walked by him in the hall as like a 14-year-old kid. And I'm like, that's the sports guy on Channel 25. You know, like that was something else.
And we were, that year ended up being 8-2.
Right.
And to us, it was unreal. But at that time, you know, no internet, and nobody really mapped out what the state series looked like.
Right.
Like to make it to state, when we were kids, people would talk about, yeah, I just want to make it to state. We're going to make it to state. Go 6-3 and make it to state. And you get there and they start talking about making it to state. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're going to make it to state. God, we're like really, they're like, no. State, like the state championship. And I'm like,
Right.
that's what you guys call state.
Yeah.
They didn't even call making the state playoff state.
Yeah.
It was just understood you were going to make the playoffs every year.
Right.
So whether or not you were going to make it to
Yeah.
state, quote unquote, to
Yeah.
them, which was a different world. So, you know, I'm a young, hungry coach who has never had any success, but started to be around people like you were talking about. One of our mentors that was insanely competitive, that kind of taught us how to win. And so now I have this desire to win, and I feel like I'm a jinx because they just come off this great team, and then we're not very good. We start off the season 0-2. So we end up 8-3, but we start 0-2, getting beat by some local teams that were up that year. So it was difficult to navigate, but it was very short before in 1998, after 2 seasons of early exits from the playoffs, we win the state championship. And I don't even know really what I'm doing yet. And I'm there for all 3 of these. So we win 3 in a row, 98, 99, 2000. And it all just happens kind of fast. And I honestly don't even know what I'm doing yet. I've made a niche. I've got a job, and I do my job, but I'm clueless, you know?
Right.
So then we go on strike, and we started 5-0 that year, and we play the 6th game against West Prairie La Harpe, which was Northwestern La Harpe, now consolidated again with Colchester, and this new that was our giant nemesis that we had just beaten in 2000 in the state championship. So they beat us like 20-16, and they score on the last drive to beat us. So and they're really, really, like, it's their year, and they barely beat us at their place. So we know we're good enough.
Right.
And we're probably going to go 2A, but we're not sure. So then we go on strike, and we forfeit 2 games to teams that we would have rolled.
Yeah.
And the strike ends, and we win our last game, go 6-3, make the playoffs, and we draw Aledo, and Aledo ends up being the state champion. But we play them in the first round, and we think we're good enough, but we've missed 2.5 weeks of practice, and we don't play our best, and they beat us 52-40. But we were right there in one of the closest games with them, and they go on to win a state championship. So we feel like, if not for the strike, we'd have been right there.
Yeah.
Like, we wanted West Prairie again. So then the next 3 years, we get 2nd in state. And it's a funny thing, and I'm going to tell this now because it sets up later talking about Oregon in this semifinal game.
This is after you moved up a class, though, right?
Yeah. So now we're playing 2A. I don't know if it's gone to an 8-class system, and that's part of the reason why we're in 2A yet. I think so. But we were always borderline because the way they figured it at the time had to do with the opponents that you played also, not just your own enrollment.
Right.
So part of our opponents bumped us up to 2A, which is fine the way they did it. But and being Carthage at the time, you couldn't find people to play you. You could find bigger people to play you.
Yeah.
Which
then makes you move up. Right.
Yeah, made us move up. So being in Carthage, you're right in the midway point of Illinois. So when Illinois would do the playoffs, sometimes they would do it in quadrants and split the state into 4. Sometimes they would do it in halves. And we were right on that line. And we were right on that line in 2000, where Northwestern La Harpe went north and we went south.
And you're not that far apart. Like,
No, I
literally.
mean we're 20 miles from each other,
Right.
and north south it's like a 5 mile difference.
Yeah.
So the line was literally drawn between us. They went north, made it the state championship game. We went south, made it the state championship game, and we run into each other, which was just this anomaly that was amazing. So if you know anything about Illinois football, which I've discovered through the years, I have no idea how we measure up against Texas or Florida, because you hear about some of these Texas teams.
Yeah.
I don't know if Illinois football is that great or not. We've gone into Missouri and we've really thumped some teams, and we've ran into some really good teams in Missouri. I can tell you this about Illinois. The farther you go north, the tougher they get. I mean, like smash mouth football. It just gets that much harder.
Right.
When you go south, I'm not knocking anybody from the south. Anybody that listens will probably make them mad, but they get softer hitting wise. And it's brutal to go through the entire playoffs in the north because you're going to run into smash mouth teams that's going to beat you up.
Right.
So these 3 years in a row that we get second, we go south. And if we go north, I don't know that we make the state championship game. But we go south and we run through it and we get to the state championship game and we run into a smash mouth team that is, and we consider ourselves a smash mouth team.
Yeah, because if people don't know, one of my favorite stories that you always would tell is like you ran the ball a lot. You ran the football. You didn't throw it. You weren't doing trick plays. And I remember one of my favorite stories was you saying that Coach Unruh, someone said to him about, you ever thought about throwing it more or running trick plays? You ever thought, wouldn't it be more fun to do those things? And he was like, well, winning's fun.
Yep.
I tell that story all the time, even yet. It's like everybody's got an idea what you should do, even though it's working. Why would you not continue to do what you're doing when you're winning?
And it's funny that kids in Carthage, they must not have watched college football, professional football, because they didn't know. I mean, they knew the Carthage offense, and there was no junior high football. There was no feeder program. It was amazing to me. It was just this moment in time where everybody's on the same page. But the other thing that Coach Unruh always said was 3 things happen when you pass the ball, and 2 of them are bad.
Right.
So when you talk about passing, he would always say that. There's an incomplete, there's an interception, and there's a completion. When you run it, you have the potential to fumble or whatever. But
Yeah.
you usually don't get sacked. You usually don't lose yards. So anyway, we're a smash mouth team. We take pride in that. 2 of those times we got rolled, and the scores were 21-7 and 32-14, but it was obvious who the better team was. And like we realized, like watching tape of the team that we play in the state championship game, they don't look that good because the 2 teams that are playing are both better than us, and we just don't realize it till we get there.
Right.
So going north would have been disastrous for us. So we end up with 3 trophies. One of them, I will say, against Toledo, we got robbed. And I'll tell that story another day, and I'll never back down from anybody from Toledo. But we got robbed, and we should have won that game. So screw them. But so fast forward, we have a couple of seasons after that. It was very disappointing. We didn't win again. We had some new coaches on the staff. We lost our defensive coordinator. We had a new defensive coordinator. So we've got a lot of people that, even though you look at Carthage and say you've had success, there's guys on that team, on that coaching staff, that have not experienced success. And guys at different positions that now people are saying, oh, we sure miss Coach Lapp, and I don't know if Coach Klein can get this done as defensive coordinator. So it's to win a state championship again is a big deal to a lot of people, obviously. So anyway, we consolidate, which is a big deal, and we end up being 3A. And our first year we go 7-3. We don't. It's turmoil the whole year. People can't get along. People are second guessing who's playing and who's starting, and there's all this trouble. And we lose in the first round of the playoffs to a 5-4 team, and that from up north,
Right.
that just smacked us in the mouth and beat us 28-0.
Yeah.
It was tough. So the next year we come out and we are really good, and we know we can be good. And we start a little bit rocky, but we go undefeated. And it's quickly becoming, holy crap, our team's really, really good.
Right.
Now, we don't have a superstar like Wyatt Green or Ashton Grunwald, and Sir Whitaker is a sophomore. If anybody doesn't know who Sir Whitaker is, he goes on to the University of Missouri, becomes a decathlete, ends up being ranked like 61st in the world by the time he's done.
Yeah.
He could have gone D1 in any of 4 sports, I swear to God. Track being his best, football being the second. Well, anyway, as a sophomore, he doesn't go to some summer stuff, and our coach is not going to play him varsity. We got 80 kids out, and he doesn't see the football field in varsity. And he could have easily been a difference maker.
Well, see, and those are the, you hope that when someone listens to something like that, did you hear what he just said? He just said there's a kid that could go D1 4 different sports, and because he didn't do what needed to be done, that's the way you do things.
He doesn't get on the
right?
field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I mean, yeah. Anyway, and so that's a story for another day. But we've got an excellent line, and we are tougher than nails. We're big, we're strong, we're fast. Our backfield is young. It's a junior fullback who had been hurt part of the year as a sophomore, shared some time. It's a sophomore halfback who is Sir Whitaker's one of his best friends, and he's not as good as Sir, and he's starting varsity.
Right.
And he's the real deal. I mean, obviously he's great. He's starting varsity as a sophomore. And then we have one wing back that's a senior, and our quarterback's a junior, first year starting there. So we're young there, and we don't have this game breaker guy that can save you. So in some of those years, like Ashton Grunwald, who I would compare to Red Grange, he could make you look good even when you weren't playing good. Like he could bail you out.
Right.
And so that's almost a bad thing, because you don't realize that you're not doing a good job until you run into a good team.
That stops him.
Right.
That takes that away.
That takes advantage of your
Right.
line, who has been getting by
because of his
talent and ability.
Right.
Yes. So we don't have a guy like that. So we actually are really good top to bottom, but we don't have a game breaker. We go north in the playoffs, which immediately we're like, crap. And we've never been 3A except for the year before, and we get rolled by a 5-4 team. Mm-hmm. So from up north, and so it's a little bit disconcerting. We have an amazing quarterfinal game also. I think my God, second round, I think we beat Macomb 62-14. I mean, we're for real. We get out of the quarterfinal game, which was against another northern team that was tougher than heck, and we run into this team, Oregon, and our game plan is we're going to run it down their throat. We're going to show them.
This is that game you were talking about.
Yes.
This is the game you were talking about when you told me that story.
Yeah. So this is the game that we're going to talk about today. Yeah. And leading up to that, just so you understand where we're at. How we doing?
18.
Wow. I talk a lot.
It's all right. No, it's fine.
So anyway.
They can pause it and come back.
Yeah. I'm sorry, everybody, if I made this too long. So our game plan is to run it down their throat. And we're pumped up and believe, that we can do that. We've got the fullback now as a senior. His nickname's the Diesel. We've got the line. I'm sorry, he's a junior. But so we're going to run it down their throat. And we go out there, and they 3-and-out us on the first one, and it's like chipping away at a concrete wall with a sledgehammer. You realize, oh crap. Mm-hmm. And our special teams coach, which was Tim Lafferty, that's how good our coaching staff is. One of the greatest small school, high school coaches of all time is our special teams coach.
Right.
And of course, so he's coaching special teams like he's a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a ton of fakes. He's got a ton of things. And he calls a fake, I think, partly frustrated, like what's going on? Like, what just happened? Like, let's get this first down, and then we're going to get going.
Yeah.
They stopped. We hadn't run a fake all year because we hadn't had to hardly punt all year.
So it's not like they have you scouted and they know this play's coming.
They sniff it out and destroy it, and they're in our territory, and they go down and score. And I will tell you, I don't remember much else, but we go into halftime down 16-7. And it's one of those games like that, 21-7 against Sterling Newman, when you just know you're outmatched. 32-14 against that state championship team. I can't even think of the name of the team right now. The guy from Rushville, Haynes, was coaching them. They had that Tut was their quarterback. And it felt like that. Going into halftime, it felt like crap.
Because numbers-wise, someone would hear you say that score and they think, well, that's not that much. Like, but you know what you know.
You know what you know.
Right.
It's two-score.
Right.
It's a two-score game against a team that is getting 3, 4, 5 yards a carry. They have not thrown the ball yet, and we cannot stop them. We can't get a second and long.
Right.
And then moving the ball, they're stopping us at what we're best at. And that feeling comes over you that, like, this is it.
Right.
And you know it is.
And I think this is, I want to stop because I don't care about the time. We talked as we just got done with our regional on Monday with the girls, and the boys start on Monday. The thing when you go to schools like we went to that you didn't win very much is you don't think about until you're winning. You're not just beating teams and they're crying when they're shaking your hands because the season's over. It's careers are over. Yeah. I'm never playing. They're never playing again. Like, they're never putting a uniform on again. And what you're saying is, like, makes me think of that situation is, at halftime, you're like, this is it. Like, there's nothing. Like, boys' careers are ending today. We were hoping we were going to go do this, and it's 16-7, which is not a blowout. And I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. Like, it's like you think you've got a winning lottery ticket, and you take it in the gas station and they point out that, no, this is, you didn't win.
Right.
Because we thought we were that good.
Yeah.
And here we ran into this brick wall that I didn't see how. But, of course, we don't give up. And here, let me sidebar. Sorry. But sidebar, here's the thing about being a good program that sucks. If the team's not very good, you usually don't get their A game. So you have a lot of wasted nights where you don't get better because teams just lay over.
Because they've already realized they come into the game knowing they have a chance.
They know they're going to get beat.
We're going to get ran anyway.
Yeah. So, and I know people listening to us are like, oh, boo-hoo, that must be awful to win games before they start. Because that's part of why you build a program. And we've won a lot of games before the whistle even blew. Right. Because they knew they were beat. Yeah. But that's also cost you a game. It's not even as good as being in a practice. Mm-hmm. We've had a lot of those over the years. On the other side, when a team is good and you're a program, you never get them on an off night if they're good.
Right.
If they can beat you, they're going to beat you and they're going to enjoy it.
Right.
So there has been
target on your back.
Yeah. Yeah. And my win-loss record in 21 years there is stupid. It's ridiculous. It's like 230. I'd have to figure it out, but it's of those 30 losses, there's not very many of them that we lost that I didn't think we should have. I said one earlier. That might be the only one. Yeah. Okay, I can think of two. And there's not very many games that we won that I don't think we should have won.
Yeah.
We didn't pull it out of our ass because that team's not having it. They're not going to have an off night against you. You're going to get when they're good, you're going to get their best. Yeah. And if they get a chance to stick it to you, they're going to. So obviously they don't know us because they're from way up north, but we're getting their best and they're better than we thought they were. And at halftime, we're telling guys, you got to make them run as many plays as possible. We know we're not, everywhere's fourth down territory. So even when you do get a 4th and 1, they go for it and they're getting at least 3 yards a carry. We cannot make them punt. But if you make them run enough plays, this is where mental toughness comes into it. You make them run enough plays, they're eventually going to screw something up. They're going to drop a handoff. We're going to make them fumble. They're going to make a mistake, and we might get them in a second and long and have a chance to make them punt. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Like we're hanging on for dear life, and it's easy to just go, this is too hard, and they start getting 8 to 10 yards a carry, and I've seen it a million times.
Yeah.
But we didn't. Our guys kept after it. And we eventually, we start doing things that we don't ever do. We start, at that time, we had 80, 90 guys out for football. And we were playing guys only one way. There's a handful of guys that were playing two ways part-time.
Right.
Like nobody's starting two ways, I don't think. Maybe
Right.
one or two. A couple of guys are running in some play in and out, and they're the backup, and they're playing a lot.
As I were sitting in a basketball community, not a football community, you're talking guys that are playing offense and defense. You and I went to a school that was small, and most of the people played on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
You're talking kids who are just playing offense or just playing defense, and the handful that play both. So 80 to 90 kids, what do we probably have?
Out for football,
Yeah,
30, 40,
30, right. And
maybe 40.
yeah. So to clarify for someone listening,
Yeah.
that's not understanding that you have only a handful of people that are playing both sides, and they are your stars.
Yeah.
Stars.
We've got 18 or 19 guys that are good enough to play on a state championship level, which is unbelievable.
Right.
You if you're lucky, you got 8 or 9 guys you can put out there, and then you try to hide 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And here we are with 18 or 19.
Yeah.
And so we start playing some guys on defense that we don't normally play there, like our quarterback, who's a junior, who's tough, but we don't want to get him hurt, and we don't need him to play two ways. But we start getting desperate.
Today you do.
Yeah. And so we throw him out there, and we go, listen, you're going to play corner, but don't backpedal, which is something we would never tell our guys. I'm getting choked up already.
Yeah.
So it's, it's the whole idea of doing things that are against the rules that you would never do. So we tell our quarterback, go play like a linebacker. Don't backpedal. So Oregon, they haven't thrown a pass. So now it's become uncomfortable that they haven't thrown a pass. It's late in the year. It's bad weather. It's cold. And now you haven't thrown a pass on a team that always runs. And now you're getting to the point where we've got 10 or 11 guys in the box, and we're getting you in a situation where you're going to have to put the ball in the air, or we're going to stop you. And as a running team, I've been there where it's been uncomfortable to throw it because you haven't thrown it.
Yeah.
And now that 11 guys are in the box, for me and you sitting on the sidelines, it's easy. Well, you got to throw it. Loosen them up, make them back off.
Yeah.
How do you throw it when 11 guys have their ears pinned back coming at you?
Right.
A lot can go wrong. So they try to throw it, and it's awful, and it's unsuccessful, and it wastes a down, and we get a stop and actually get the ball back. And I didn't look this up before I came, and I should have. I think the final score is 26-23 us, or 27-23 us, I think. But we were down 23-20, and we had to get a stop, and we got it, and we got the ball back. And we still can't move the ball. We're still having trouble moving the ball. At this time, we might have only had 13. So we start running plays that I didn't know we had. As a part-time coach, I only dealt with defensive backs, and I helped call offense with our head coach. I was always right by his side. So some stuff that other people were doing, I didn't know. And we had this dead time in practice where people were traveling, and Coach Lafferty had put in all these plays as a backup if we ever needed them, because you never know what you're going to need, because we're 3A's new ball game to us. So he's got all these pass plays that is just kind of like a side gig of his to keep him busy and emergency backup.
Right.
So we start running those plays.
That you really never have ran in a game.
Never ran in a game, which is something.
One game away from the state championship game.
So at Carthage, you don't do this. You don't break your rules of, you don't make stuff up. So, and I'm having lunch with Jim Unruh 3 months ago in Bushnell. He actually lives close to Bushnell, and he stopped in one time, and we're talking about this game, and he goes, maybe you know this, but why did we put Zach Burling in? Whose idea was it? Zach Burling's our safety, never plays offense. And I said, well, I happen to remember what happened. One of our defensive backs, Brett Cook, comes up to me because we had thrown some balls and they got dropped or whatever. very frustrating. And he goes, Coach, you put Burling in. He can catch it.
So one of the players tells the head coach,
Tells me.
tells you,
Tells one of the assistant coaches who he knows will listen.
right?
We need to put Burling in. He's our safety. And I'm like, I look at him like, what? I'm like, really? He goes, yes, he will catch it. So desperate, I go over to Jim, which by this time it's past when I didn't know what I was doing. And now I'm starting to get a little respect and Jim will listen to me, but I really don't think he'll listen to me on this, but I go,
Because it's outlandish.
because he doesn't even know that Zach Burling plays wide receiver on this side gig that Tim Lafferty's been running.
Right.
So I tell him, and he looks at me and turns and goes, Burling, and calls for him. And I'm like, holy shit, he's going to put him in.
Doesn't question you at all.
Doesn't question me.
Yeah.
Puts him in, tells Lafferty, come here. Lafferty starts calling the plays. Lafferty starts telling Jim what to run. Jim is calling plays in it, and he's laughing. We're talking about this at the Bushnell restaurant. He is laughing because he's calling plays, and he doesn't know what they are.
Right. The head coach is calling plays that Coach Lafferty has come up with. He doesn't even know.
He doesn't know what he's calling.
He's just calling them in.
He's just trusting Tim.
Right.
And we're desperate.
In the game before the state championship
Yes.
game.
And it's working. And we get where it's 23-20. And as I told you, this is probably where I'm going to get choked up, but there's like 10 plays or things that happen in the fourth quarter that have to go our way. They have to go our way or we're going to lose. Like, we have to stop them here. We have to make them punt. We have to get this first down.
Right.
Over and over again. And every one of them is at best, 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
And we get it every time. So,
I listened to something the other day. They were talking about, a coach was talking about winning. I swear it was that winning is so precious. Like, to win a game, there's so many little things like what you're saying that have to be done exactly right or go your way to win. It's not bludgeoning something over the head sometimes. Mm-hmm. It has to be things have to fall just right for it to happen.
Well, as our mentor told us a long time ago, winning never feels as good as losing feels bad.
Right.
And I've experienced that through most of my life, but this is one of those times where when things go the way, like, we probably didn't enjoy winning enough.
Right.
I should have enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily buy into that as much as I used to, but that's part of getting older.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's 4th and 11. We're in our own territory. And not only are we calling plays now that some of us don't even know what they are, we've had to adjust those plays on the fly. So plays that we don't practice very much, we're adjusting them against their defense to make them work. So literally, like you said earlier, we're drawing plays in the dirt like we're playing backyard football. We're on the sideline in the dirt saying, don't run this route, cut it short and come back to the ball here. So we did something that we've never done. Never. And so I am standing down by the first down line, and this is key. I don't remember how much time's left, but there's not much. And we have to get this first down. And we have to go for it. We can't punt. We're not going to stop them. There's not enough time. We have to go for it on 4th and 11. And we run this sort of button hook thing that goes about 10.5 yards to our best receiver. Not the safety this time, but our tight end. And he catches it and immediately gets hit in the back. And it is apparent where I am that it looks like we're short. And I'm like, oh my God.
After all that, thinking at halftime you didn't have a chance, drawing plays up, all the things that you've just said, and this is the one play, and you're standing right down the line. Those of us who've been on a football field, you're looking right at it.
And we've fallen in love with these kids because the communities couldn't get along. The adults are childish and hate each other, and these kids, learn to love each other. and play together and make something work that the mature people of the community couldn't possibly make work. So it's, it's bigger than the game. Just a second. So I remember being right on the first down line, and I'm down on my hands and knees, and I am smacking the ground with my hand, and I'm begging. I'm like, please, God, please. I just don't see how it's a first down. And like God gives two craps about a high school football game. And I'm begging, and they take the chains out and they measure it, and we get it, and I just can't believe it.
Right.
And from there's at least 2 or 3 other times in that drive where we have to have something. And we get it, and we win, and time is running out. I remember going back we got some bleachers there right on the sideline where players can sit. And I stand up on it and face the crowd, and I remember screaming, and somebody got a picture of it. And it's a great picture if I wasn't so freaking fat back then. But and I screamed, we're going to Champaign, baby, and my arms are up in the air. And afterwards, I asked Tim Lafferty for a copy of because I wanted to watch it, because I just could not believe it. And the funny thing is, it's not the same when you watch that. I wish to God that game was televised and had commentary, so we knew down and distance. Because watching game film, you just don't.
Right.
You just don't see those things and know those nuances. So it wasn't ever the same. But I remember Tim telling me, he goes, I got out of there as fast as I could. He goes, it felt like, for the first time in my life, like we had stolen something.
Right.
And we had to get out of there before somebody realized and made us come back and replay something. He's just like, I was just paranoid.
Because you
like
because you had no business.
We had
no business.
No business.
It wasn't because of a call. It wasn't because the officials. They were the better team.
And we stole it. And it was a miracle.
Even though you, like you said, you believed you were going to win that game. You believed you were winning the state championship. It wasn't like you went into it thinking, we got no chance.
I don't know how we didn't break this sledgehammer. We just kept chipping away at that wall until we got through it. And somehow it was a miracle. We broke through that wall and didn't break the hammer. We go to the state championship game the next week, and their quarterback, who played safety for him, who was the hardest hitting kid I've ever seen in my life. He's one of the best football players I've ever seen in high school. He was a kid you would just love to have on your team. And so they're doing all state before our game for 3A. And I don't know how many kids it is, maybe 40 kids that get all state, maybe not that, maybe 30. And he's one of them. And he's crying. He's got his head down. Several of us went up and talked to him. I don't remember what I said to him, because what do you say? Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing, and we talked about this before we started, I don't feel sorry for, because sorry and pity are different. I pity people that don't understand that high school sports and sports in general just make a difference in your life. Like, it's life stuff. It's not a ball and a rim or a bat and a ball or a football and some goalposts. It's life. The life lessons that we both have learned from either being coaches or playing it ourselves or watching kids, you as an administrator now, people who don't get it, it's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about.
Because we have a connection with this kid because we know how good he was. We know how good their team was.
Right.
And we know how bad it hurt to be there and not be playing.
Yeah.
And I've never heard, Oregon has had some good playoff teams, but I don't know how successful they've been since. Yeah. If that was their one shot. But yeah. I mean, the funny thing is we won the state championship game with 26 seconds to go on a 25-yard pass.
Right.
right?
Which, remember, if you're listening, you don't pass it.
We don't pass it.
And
and here's this team from the South,
Right.
that they are not a brick wall, but they got a bunch of good athletes and,
Right,
and a
played
really
hard.
good quarterback. And
Yeah.
we didn't play very well. And I hope none of them ever hear this and think I'm knocking them, because it was like being locked in a room and the lights are off and you're listening to Metallica's Master of Puppets album and Black Sabbath's first album, and then you come out of there and you go into a room and the lights are all on and you're going to listen to Thriller. And like, I'm not a big Michael Jackson fan, but that's a really good album.
Right.
All three of those are, but they're just different.
Yeah.
And it was a really weird thing to go through that buzzsaw and then face a team completely not like that.
Right.
And we didn't play very well, and they played well. And we ended up winning, thank God. It was like the miracle when in the 1980 hockey team, they beat the Russians, and then you forget the rest of it. They win the next game, which isn't a sure thing.
Right.
Like, to me, that was the state championship game, but we almost didn't win it the next week.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but
again, when you told me that story, all those years ago, it really is. It's not just football. It's the fact that the lessons that you hope those kids learned about life, that, things don't go the way you planned them. When the kickoff and the game started, you didn't think that was how the story was going to go. Mm-hmm. Not even that you thought you were going to win 50-0. It wasn't that you were going to be running things that you had never ran, that you're putting players in positions they had not been in, because that's what it took to get what you want. Mm-hmm. That's life.
yep.
You took a chance instead of just saying, well, this is not our day. We talk about that all the time.
Yep.
We talked to the girls about that a lot, and towards the end of the year, about if you wake up in the morning and you think it's going to be a bad day, or you resign yourself to the fact I'm not going to get what I want, you're probably not going to get what you want. Like, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to change to make it go the way you want it to go?
Yeah, that I really didn't realize it was a life lesson until years later. And I didn't realize how emotional I was about it until that day, stopping in your kitchen and telling you that story.
Right.
It was such an incredible story. And at the time, I had more details for you. I know I did.
Right.
Because I had more of those plays that had to work.
Right.
I didn't, in telling it, I didn't realize how important it was to me, to other coaches on that staff. I mean, take Tim Lafferty. He had been to the state championship game twice, fallen short.
So if you're listening to this and you aren't from over home and you're not of a certain age, he was the coach of your nemesis. He was the head coach of your rival.
Yeah.
Hated rival.
We were the Celtics Lakers, and he was the Celtics, and we were the Lakers in my mind.
Right.
But I mean,
and then you end up together.
Yeah.
And he's the coach. I mean, that's the other thing. I
mean, we hated each other.
It's one thing for two rivals to get together when they're on the downside of it. It's another thing for two rivals to get together when they're really not, for the most part. And then, like you said earlier, try to make it work. Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother talk. That's a whole nother talk too. So this isn't some other coach that has nothing to, you have no relationship. It's actually a relationship if you'd been trying to beat each other for years. Anybody that knows that was a game circled on. If there was the NFHS back then, people would have been tuning in or going back and watching that game after they got home from their own game in the area.
I mean, we had a couple of games against them when we were both highly state ranked. Like, we were always both good when we played, but when we were like 1 and 2 in state at the same time,
right,
we had 4,000 or 5,000 people at those games, and they were unreal to be at.
Yeah, I remember you talking.
And at that time, we didn't speak to each other. Our staff and their staff, we hated each other's guts.
Yeah, and then he ends up being...
So a few years before that, before we consolidate, I start talking to him, and I realize he's really a great guy. You know, I had painted him out to be this Adolf Hitler enemy of mine, but we ended up starting to become friends. And then when we started coaching together, you know, mad respect, because he was such a workhorse. I've never met a guy that works harder, that sleeps less, that does more than him. And you know, his kids are on this team. One kid's a sophomore, just dressing, but the other one's the starting quarterback. Yeah. And for him to finally get the state championship, and for Coach Klein to get the state championship as the D coordinator, because nobody had won the one at Carthage except for Bill Lapp as D coordinator. And then Rusty Willie was on our staff, and some other guys from both schools that had never won, and it was a huge deal. And for me, it was the first state championship we'd won since I felt like I was really contributing. You know, I was just kind of along for the ride. Yeah. Like a deer in the headlights before. Yeah. And then felt like we really earned it. Really earned it.
Yeah, that's like, I remember that day you told me that. And again, you might listen to this, and I hope you stuck with it. But as a coach, these are the things that if you care like we both do, and other people that we know do, it's why the game is so special to you. It's why sports and being a coach, you know, means so much to you. Because you have a bond with those kids, not even because you won, because you hung together. You didn't quit together. That's the thing. You have a bond with those kids, not because you went on to win the state championship or even that you won that game. It's because together you hung in there when it would have been easy to go,
easy to quit. Yeah.
Because I said to our two seniors the other day, quitting's easy. Coach Giesler always said that. It's hard to hang in and to be a player and to work and to try to be the best you can be. It's hard. Yeah. It's easy to do the other. Because all you got to do that is just walk away. You know.
Well, I hope you guys that I coached with and that I coached get a chance to listen to this, and I hope I did it justice. I know there's probably some things I remember differently than everybody else. I hope I didn't mess anything up too badly, but just know that I love you guys.
Well, again, like I started with, coaching has been such a big part of my life, and when I started this podcast, I wanted this to be a part of it, and I haven't really got into it much. And I didn't figure there was any better way to start than with that story, because I don't know if I have any story that tops that. So
someday have me back and I'll tell you about the year we beat QND at our place and won the state championship against the team that beat us the year before.
I will definitely do that.
That's a good
and
one.
We've got a lot of them to do. So if you listen with us, it's kind of long. You can always pause it and come back to it. But I love you, buddy. It's a good one to sit down and talk.
Love you too. It's a good one.
Take care.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And like I always tell you at the end of these things, never forget, I don't know what you got going on, but life is always good.